Hello and welcome. Let us discuss 100 MCQs on biodiversity. Question number 1, which is not used for ex situ plant conservation. So ex situ plant conservation is the conservation and maintenance of fauna and flora, that is animals and vegetation outside their natural habitat using various methods like zoo, botanical garden, seed banks, tissue culture. Here the shifting cultivation is not used for ex situ plant conservation because shifting cultivation is a mode of farming where plots or lands are cultivated temporarily, then abandoned later on, and rest options like gene banks, botanical garden and seed banks are the methods for ex situ plant conservation. Coming to the question number 2, an area is declared as hotspot when? Now, to qualify as a biodiversity hotspot, a region must have two strict criteria. First, it must have at least 1,500 vascular species, more than 1,500 vascular species as endemics. Now, endemics, means it must have a high percentage of plant life, plant or animal life found nowhere else on the planet. So here option A, that is it has 1,500 or more endemic species and 75% of its original habitat is lost. So option A is the correct answer. Question number 3, which of the following is the most important cause of animal and plants being driven to extinction? Answer C, that is habitat loss and fragmentation is the correct answer. Habitat destruction and fragmentation is a process that describes the formation of discontinuities, that is fragmentation. Discontinuities means fragmentation, or the loss means destruction of an organism's environment. So option C is correct, that is habitat loss and fragmentation is the most important cause of animal and plants being driven to extinction. Question number 4, which of the following represent maximum number of species among global biodiversity? Here we are talking about the global biodiversity and the answer is fungi. Now fungi have a worldwide distribution and grow in a wide range of habitats, including extreme environments such as deserts or area with high salt concentration or ionizing radiation, as well as in deep sea sediments. Now some fungi can survive even in the intense ultraviolet radiation and cosmic radiation. The global biodiversity, maximum number of species among global biodiversity is fungi. Question number 5, the biodiversity of a geographic region represents, and here answer D, that is diversity of organisms living in the region is the correct answer, because different plants, animals and microorganisms plus the genetic information may contain and the ecosystems of which they are a part of biodiversity. So the biodiversity of a geographic region, it represents the diversity of organisms living in the region. Question number 6, red list contains data or information on, and the answer is threatened species. The red list means the IUCN red list of threatened species is the world's most comprehensive inventory of the global conservation status of plants and animal species. Now the threatened species are those species which are very much prone to get extinct or endangered in the future if not conserved properly. So they are enlisted in the red list, IUCN red list, so that they can have greater help from society. So red list contains data or information on threatened species. Question number 7, a hot spot of biodiversity in India is. Now there are various options and Western Ghats is the correct answer. Officially there are 4 out of 36 biodiversity hotspots in the world are present in India. Now the first is Himalayas, second Western Ghats, third Indo-Burman region and fourth is the Sunderland, which includes Nicobar group of islands. So among all these options, this Western Ghat is the correct answer, which is the hottest spot of biodiversity in India. Next question, which one of the following is an example of ex situ conservation? Now the answer is, here they are asking the example of ex situ. So the answer is seed bank, because sacred groves, wildlife sanctuaries and national parks are the examples of in situ conservation methods. Question number 9. The region of Biosphere Reserve, which is legally protected and where no human activity is allowed, is known as. So as you know that there are three regions of Biosphere Reserve. Answer is core zone, because in core zone where no human activity is allowed, and this core zone is legally protected area. Next question is, which of the following national park is home to famous deer Hangul? And the answer is Dechigam National Park, Jammu and Kashmir. Now let me tell you that in Kaibul Limanzo National Park, Manipur, is a place for brown deer, where brown deer, that is Sangai, is protected. Next question is, which one of the following is related to ex situ conservation of threatened animals and plants? And the answer is Wildlife Safari Park. Next question is, all of the following are included in ex situ conservation except. Now you have to take the odd one out, which is not ex situ conservation method. And now let us see the botanical garden, which is ex situ conservation method. Sacred grove. So this is the answer, because sacred groves are in situ conservation methods. Now next question is, how many biogeographic does India have? And the answer is 10. Next question, lime is generally added to soil to make the soil acidic. Lime is generally added to soil to make acidic. Next question, you have to name which has the maximum genetic diversity in India. Here the answer is mango, because we have various mango varieties. So we can see that mangoes, they show maximum genetic diversity. Next question, dash, you have to name, is one of the most prevalent hotspot of biodiversity in India, and the answer is Western Ghat, as we discussed earlier, because Western Ghats are the biodiversity hotspot in India. Next question is, dash is not generally seen in biodiversity hotspot, which is not generally seen, and the answer is lesser interspecific competition, because this endemism, species richness, loss of diversity is very much prevalent in biodiversity hotspot. So answer is D, which is not generally seen in biodiversity hotspot, that is lesser interspecific competition. Next question, dash occurs when the death of the last individual in a species occur. Now here the answer is extinction. Extinction occurs when there is a death of the last individual in a species. Next question is defined as an ecological state of a species being unique to a specific geographic region or location, and the answer is endemic species. So endemic species is defined as an ecological state of a species being unique. Unique means it's very special to a specific geographic location or region. Next question, it is a forest cover to be maintained as per the National Forest Policy 1988, and the answer is 67% for hills and 33% for plains. Next question is, dash is defined as the number of species represented in a specific region, landscape or ecological community, and the answer is species richness. So species richness we can define, it is the number of species represented in a specific region, landscape or ecological community. Next question is, dash is the basic unit for classification and the taxonomic rank, and the answer is species. Next question is, global warming can significantly be controlled by, and the answer is reducing fossil fuel consumption. Fossil fuel consumption, which is non-renewable sources of energy. So we can, if we can reduce the consumption of fossil fuel, so we can control global warming. Next question, which of the following animal is now extinct? And the answer is Tasmanian tiger. Tasmanian tiger is now extinct. Question number 25. One of the ex situ conservation method for endangered species is, and the answer is cryopreservation. Next question is, which of the following is not done in a wildlife sanctuary? And the answer is soil and flora is utilized. So in wildlife sanctuary, fauna is conserved. Fauna means animals, they are conserved, as well as flora, that is all vegetation is conserved, and hunting is prohibited. So this is soil and flora is utilized, which is not done in wildlife sanctuary. Next question is, first national park developed in India is, and the answer is Jim Corbett National Park. Next question, which one of the following pair of geographical areas show maximum biodiversity in our country? And the answer is Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats. Now next is genetic biodiversity in agriculture crops is threatened by, and the answer is introduction of high yield varieties. Next question is, which is the most effective way to conserve the plant diversity of an area? And the answer is by creating Biosphere Reserve. So by creating Biosphere Reserve, which can conserve plant diversity of a particular area. Next is, which group of vertebrates comprises the highest number of endangered species? And the answer is mammals. Next question, the words dangerous, threat to wildlife is by, and the answer is habitat destruction. So habitat destruction is the most dangerous threat to wildlife. Next is, new approach to conservation is the establishment of, and the answer is Biosphere Reserve. So by protecting or by conserving our Biosphere Reserve, we can conserve our biodiversity effectively. Question number 34. Wildlife is destroyed most by, and the answer is destruction of natural habitat. Next question. In situ conservation refers to, and the answer is on-site conservation. On-site conservation means the conservation in their natural habitat. And this off-site conservation is ex situ conservation method. Next question is, endemism refers to, and the answer is species confined to that region and not found anywhere else. Next question is, the natural aging of the lake is called, and the answer is eutrophication. Natural aging of a lake by nutrient enrichment of its water. For example, in a young lake, the water is cold and clear, supporting little life. With time, streams draining into lake introduce nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, which encourage the growth of aquatic organism. Now this is known as natural aging of lake. So eutrophication is the main cause for this phenomena. Next question is, biodiversity is a measure of variation at the level, and the answer is, as you know, that there are three types of biodiversity. First is genetic biodiversity, then species biodiversity, followed by ecosystem biodiversity. So the option D, that is all of the above, is a measure of variation at the level of biodiversity. So we can say that we can measure the level of biodiversity by measuring the genetic constitution, by seeing the species variation, and by studying the ecosystem. Next question is, terrestrial biodiversity is usually greater near the, and the answer is equator. So terrestrial biodiversity is greater near the equator. Next question is, following is usually measured at the species diversity level. So species diversity level, and the answer is taxonomic diversity, because taxonomic diversity is based on the species diversity. Now the next is, diversity of all living things depends on, and we can say the diversity of all living things depends on geography, depends on soil, the texture of soil, the type of soil, and the presence of other species of fauna and flora. So we can say diversity of all living things depends on all three factors like geography, soils, and presence of other species. So option D is correct. Next is following steps can conserve the forest cover, and the answer is, again the answer is all the above. So the first option is prevent forest fire, prevention of overgrazing by cattle, hunting and poaching should be banned. So these are the steps which can conserve the forest cover. Next question is, what happens to species diversity as we move away from the equator? Away from the equator means we are going away from the equator, that is towards the poles, and the answer is decreases. So basically the diversity observed at the species level is known as the species diversity, as you know, and it is a number and abundance of each species in a particular area. So the decrease in the diversity of a species is observed while moving from equator towards the pole. Next question is, which place has greatest biodiversity on earth? And the answer is Amazonian rainforest. Now, because the tropical Amazonian rainforest situated in South America, and it has maximum biodiversity on earth, and situated in the tropical region, that is it is a home for about 378 species of reptiles, 427 species of amphibians and mammals, 1300 bird species are there, 3000 species of fishes are there, and again 40,000 plants and 1,25,000 invertebrate species are present. So we can say that the greatest biodiversity on earth is present on Amazonian rainforest. Next question is, biodiversity can be broadly classified into how many types? So there are three types of biodiversity. That is species biodiversity, that is a number of different species found in a location. Second is genetic biodiversity, that is genetic variation within a species. And third is ecosystem biodiversity, that variation in the ecosystems of the region. Next question is, the loss in biodiversity is not attributed, and the answer is use of sustainable products. And why the use of sustainable product? Because the over-exploding increase in human population leads to the consumption of resources, consumption of natural resources, and exploitation of the earth's surface. This results in the destruction of natural habitats and ecosystems. The use of sustainable alternatives is a step towards conservation. So by using sustainable measures or by using sustainable products, we can conserve our biodiversity. Next question is, in how many ways does the conservation of biodiversity work? And the answer is 2, because the conservation methods are broadly classified as in situ and ex situ method. As you know that in situ conservation methods, where species are conserved in their natural ecosystem or natural habitat, and in ex situ conservation method, where species are protected and conserved in artificial or man-made habitat, like and this is very good for breeding of new and endangered plant and species in a controlled condition. So there are two ways by which we can conserve our biodiversity, in situ and ex situ methods. Next question is, which one of the following is not an in situ conservation method? So zoo is ex situ conservation method. National parks, again this is in situ conservation method. Biosphere reserve, in situ conservation method. And sanctuaries, in situ conservation method. So here you have to tick which is not in situ, which is ex situ, and the answer is zoo or zoological garden. So because zoo is a controlled environment where animals are kept. And next question is, which is an advantage of ex situ conservation? And ex situ conservation because genetic process for breeding and for long life. So as we know that ex situ conservation method is very good for conserving endangered plant and animal species, and this is provided in a controlled and required condition for longer life with the captive breeding and genetic techniques for the development of species which are healthy and more productive. So this is the advantage of ex situ conservation method. Here we can conserve endangered, threatened, or we can say the extinct, about to extinct species of fauna and flora. Next question is, the activities of cultivation of land timber harvesting is permitted in, and the answer is sanctuaries, because sanctuaries are the areas where only wildlife is present, and so the cultivation, harvesting of timber, they are permitted only if it does not interfere with the project. And in all three options like national parks, biosphere reserve and protected area, so it is prohibited. So the activities of cultivation of land, timber and harvesting is permitted only in sanctuaries. Next is, which of the following statement is true? So we have to tick the true statement. First is, diversity exists only at the species level. As we know that diversity does not exist only at the species level, there are genetic level or ecosystem level also. And second is, diversity exists only at the macromolecular level, which is again the incorrect answer. And the next is, diversity exists at all levels of biological organization, which is the correct answer. Let us see the last answer, last option, diversity exists at the genetic level only, which is again the incorrect answer, because biodiversity is a variety and variability of all the level of biological organization, means plants and animal life on earth. The diversity exists not only at the genetic level but all level of biological organization like genetic level, species level, ecosystem level. So option C is correct. Next is, what can a single species show? First is, no variation at genetic level, no diversity at genetic level, low diversity at the genetic level and high diversity at the genetic level. And the answer D is correct, because a single species can show high diversity at genetic level, because genetic diversity, as you know, it is most important among various level of biodiversity, and high diversity can be seen only in a single species. Next question is, what is the feature of the biosphere? And the answer is heterogeneity, because the biosphere is the total surface and the atmosphere integrating all living beings and their relationship to the earth. Biosphere reserve is the highest among all the levels of biodiversity, and the biosphere is the heterogeneous in nature and show immense diversity. So the heterogeneity is the feature of biodiversity. Next question is, which one of the following is the major threat? Threat means major danger for biodiversity, and the answer is climate change, because climate change is one of the major threat to biodiversity, because it is a major factor in the distribution of species across the globe. So climate change forces them to adjust, but many are not able to adjust, and that causes them to die. So the climate change is the major threat. It is a danger. Continuous climate change is the threat for biodiversity. Next question is, habitat destruction which results in the threat to biodiversity is resulted due to, and the answer is agricultural industries, because the primary cause of loss of biodiversity is habitat destruction, which is resulted due to the commercial activities associated with agriculture, irrigation, fishing. So extra land is needed to grow more edible food items, and more land has to be cleared to meet these needs. So habitat destruction, so agriculture industries is the threat to biodiversity. Next question is, how do invasive species affect biodiversity? And the answer is it threatens the survival of the native species. Invasive species are the non-native species that invade healthy ecosystem and threaten the survival of the native species, either by attacking them or competing with them for the habitat's resource. So invasive species affect the biodiversity because it threat the survival of the native species. It used to compete with the native species. Next question is, what does the acronym HIPPO, HIPPO full form, which describes the main causes for threatened to biodiversity? So the answer is B, habitat destruction, I for invasion species, first P, pollution, second P, population, and O is over harvesting. Next question is, what is called for the natural habitat under in situ conservation? The answer is protected areas, because in situ conservation, as you know, is one of the type of biodiversity conservation. First is in situ, second is ex situ conservation method. And in situ conservation involves the protection of flora and fauna within its natural habitat. There are 4 types of protected areas like Biosphere Reserve, National Park, Wildlife Sanctuaries and Gene Sanctuaries. Natural habitat under in situ conservation is protected area. Next question is, which one of the following is the way for conservation of biodiversity? And the answer is removal of exotic species. Now removal of why? Because it will allow the native species that they have negatively impacted to recover their ecological niches. Now the removal of exotic species is practical only given large group of individuals due to the economic cost. So by removing the exotic species, now this is one of the way for conservation of biodiversity. Next is, which of the following region has maximum diversity? And the answer is mangroves. Next question is, approximately 50% of total world species are present on, and the answer is tropical rainforest. Next question is biodiversity, and the answer is increases towards equator. Biodiversity means the variety of fauna and flora. It increases towards the equator. Next question is the most important reason for decrease in biodiversity, and the answer is over-exploitation. Over-exploitation of natural resources, over-exploitation of fauna and flora, over-exploitation of land, which is the main reason for decrease in biodiversity. Next question is, dodo is, and this is extinct, it disappears. Next question is, blue whale is placed under, and the answer is endangered. Next is, dash is one of the most prevalent hotspot biodiversity in India, and answer is Western Ghats. Next is, Galapagos finches are a good example of, and the answer is adaptive radiation. Now the Darwin's finches are a classic example of adaptive radiation, and their common ancestors arrived on the Galapagos about 2 million years ago. And during the time that has passed, the Darwin finches have evolved into 15 recognized species, different in their body size, beak, shape, song and feeding behavior. Now the next question is, which one of the following is not observed in biodiversity? And the answer is accelerated species loss. Next question is, sacred groves are especially useful in conserving rare and threatened species. Now the sacred groves are parts of the forest that are left untouched by local and even given complete protection by them. Now the sacred groves help in the protection of many rare, endangered, threatened and endemic species of plants and animals found in a particular area. And the process of deforestation is strictly prohibited in this region, that is in the sacred groves, by tribals Hence, we can say the sacred groves where biodiversity is preserved, or it is a biodiversity rich area. Next question is, the term alpha diversity refers to, answer is species diversity. Next question is, select the correct statement about biodiversity. The first is, the desert area of Rajasthan and Gujarat have a very high level of desert animals species as well as numerous rare animals. This is not true. And large scale planting of BT cotton, which is genetically modified cotton, has no adverse effect on biodiversity. Definitely there are so many adverse or so many negative effects on biodiversity. And the C is, Western Ghats have a very high degree of species richness and endemism. This is the correct answer. And the conservation of biodiversity in just a fade pursuit by the developed countries. This is the incorrect answer. So Western Ghats have a high degree of species richness and endemism. This is the correct answer. Now the next question is, biodiversity of a geographical region represent. The answer is the diversity in the organisms living in the region. So this is the biodiversity of the geographical region, is the diversity of the organism living in the particular region. Next is, wildlife conservation aims at, and the answer is to enrich the wildlife diversity with exotic species. Now exotic species means the alien species or the introduced species or the immigrant species, foreign species, or non-indigenous species, or non-native species, or species living outside its native place is known as exotic species. Next question is, sacred groves are especially useful in, and the answer, generating environmental awareness. This is the correct answer. Next question is, the term used for a species which is in danger of being extinct in near future. Endangered species are the species which is endangered and which can be extinct in near future. These are known as endangered species. Next question is, rich biodiversity is not important for, and the answer is alien species or the foreign species. So it is important for healthy ecosystem. Rich biodiversity is important for healthy ecosystem. Rich biodiversity is important for survival of human race on this planet. So it is not important for alien species or foreign species. So answer C is correct. Next question is, exploration of molecular, genetic and species level diversity for novel products of economic importance is known as, and the answer is bioprospecting. Is defined as a systematic and organized research for useful products derived from bioresources like plants, microorganisms, animals, and which can be developed further for commercialization and overall benefits of the society. Next question is, one out of the following is not responsible for biodiversity loss. The answer is ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation is not responsible for biodiversity loss because it is the conservation where we can conserve, we can increase the population of endangered species, extinct species, or very rare species. Next question is, which of the following statement are true? There are 4 statements and you have to choose the correct statements. There are more than one statement, and let me tell you the answer, and this is the answer. First is the right answer, where statement A, let us see statement A, species diversity provides stability to the ecosystem. This is correct. And second is communities with the more special trend to the more stable than those with the less species. So again this is correct because more species is more stable than the less species. And next is ecosystems with higher biodiversity are more productive than the ecosystem with lower biodiversity. Again this is the correct answer. And now let us see the option number 4. Biodiversity is not essential for the maintenance and health of ecosystem. This is the false answer. This is not correct because biodiversity is essential for maintenance and health of ecosystem. Now next question is, a species facing extremely high risk of extinction in the immediate future is called, and the answer is critically endangered species. So critically endangered species, they are at high risk or very extreme risk of extinction in near future. Next is cryopreservation of gametes of threatened species in viable and fertile condition can be referred to as. So this is the method for ex situ conservation. Cryopreservation is the method, ex situ conservation method. So advanced ex situ conservation of biodiversity. Now the next question is, which of the following best method of germplasm conservation, and the answer is geological park, that is the ex situ method. Germplasm conservation means the genetic resource or the genetic constitution conservation. Next is the most effective means of conservation of biodiversity, and the answer is preserve habitat. Preserve habitats of fauna and flora. This is the most effective means of conservation of biodiversity. Next is sacred groves in India are found in, and the answer is Bastar areas of Madhya Pradesh. Next question is, sacred forests are those that, and the answer is, so they are protected by tribal community because various religious sentiments are attached to the tribal communities. So the sacred forests are those which are protected by the tribal communities, and they are very rich in biodiversity. Next question is, hotspots are priority areas for in situ conservation. The key criteria for determining a hotspot is, and the answer is the number of endemic species and degree of threat is the criteria for determining the hotspot. Next question is, the extinction of passenger pigeon was due to, and the answer is over-exploitation by humans. Next question is, when we conserve and protect the whole ecosystem, its biodiversity at all levels in protected, this approach includes all of the following except, and the answer is seed bank, because Biosphere Reserve, national parks and sanctuaries are the examples of in situ conservation method. And here we are talking about the ex situ conservation method, that is seed bank. Next is, in which of the following both pairs have correct combination, and the answer is A. Now let us see. In situ conservation, national park; ex situ conservation, botanical garden. So this is the correct pair, because national parks are the examples of in situ conservation and botanical gardens are the examples of ex situ conservation. Now next is, sacred groves are especially useful in, and the answer is conserving rare and threatened species. Next question is, which one of the following shows maximum genetic diversity in India? So here the rice, because we have many varieties of rice, so we can say the rice shows maximum biodiversity in India. Next question is, which one of the following pairs of organisms are exotic species introduced in India? And the answer is lantana, camara and water hyacinth. And these are the exotic species introduced to India. These are the foreign species introduced to India. Now next is, the presence of diversity at the junction of territories of two different habitats is known as, and the answer is edge effect. Next question is, one of the ex situ conservation methods for endangered species, and the answer is cryopreservation, because wildlife sanctuaries, botanical, biosphere reserve and national parks are in situ conservation method. Next is, when the last individual in a particular species die, it is known as, and the answer is extinction. When the last individual dies, it is known as extinction of the species. Next is, the Earth Summit held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 was called, and the answer is, it is called for the conservation of biodiversity and sustainable utilization of its benefits. Next question is the World Summit on Sustainable Development held in, and the answer is held in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2002. Next question is the Historic Convention on Biological Diversity, that is the Earth Summit, was held in, and the answer is Earth Summit was held in Rio de Janeiro and in the year 1992. Next is, what is genetic diversity? So genetic diversity is the total genetic information. Total genetic information means right from the chromosomes to gene. Gene is the smallest unit for transferring information from one generation to the another generation. So we can say the all genetic information stored and they are contained within all individual of a species is known as genetic diversity. Next is biodiversity is the study of diversity, and the answer is at all levels of biological organization, that is the species level of organization, below species level, at the species level, at the community level, that is at all levels of biological organization is known as, it is the study of biodiversity. So that's all for today. Please subscribe this channel for more multiple choice question on different topics related to environmental science. Till then, happy learning. Bye bye.